Good morning or good afternoon. How's everybody doing? Get the video cranking here. See if you can. There we go. Happy. Uh-oh. So a down day is a good thing, huh, Will? I'm not surprised to hear that from you. Hey, okay, good. Nice. That is a good day. I did the opposite of that yesterday. But the day before was not the same. So, yeah, it is what it is. Right? I know. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. Actually, more often you lose, just as long as the winners are bigger than the losers, right? Welcome out to Trading Coaches Playbook. My name is Tony Benson. I will be your guide for the next little bit. We're going to have some fun today. Hopefully you, well, let me get there. Today's going to be fun, interesting. Awesome. Hey, Kevin, I'm doing great. Thanks. Awesome. Let's get the disclaimer out of the way. You've all seen this a couple 100 million times, right? I'm not a registered broker-dealer investment advisor. I will not give you any recommendations or advice. Everything we do here is purely for educational purposes. If we do talk about trading, just assume that it is a paper trade or a practice trade. For regulatory reasons, we do not discuss funded trading. So, as we normally do, we'll get through and just show you all the events coming up. We got Trading You coming up on the 9th. That's just a week away. Patterns in the Flash Q&A. That's with yours truly. If you haven't had Patterns in the Flash yet, it is that's June 15th. That's only 12 days away. That is good. Mainly because you should know by now that you get a 2-week free trial, right? With just about everything we have, I believe. But if you get the trial for Patterns in Flash today, then you can come spend an hour with me on the 15th, and we'll talk about charting and whatever we feel like. So it's basically 1 hour for subscribers to Patterns in Flash. So if you want another free hour with me, then sign up for that. Plus, you'll get the 8 hours of video that's in there and the flashcards and everything else that comes with that tool itself. So the One Trade Away Challenge is the day after that on the 16th. Inner Circle, June 24th and 25th, 10 a.m. Eastern time. Of course, Mastermind Group is every Tuesday, right? 8 to 9. And then the free online workshops, Power Hour with Rob, Trading Coaches Playbook, what we're doing now every Friday morning. And then Market Mornings with Rob is every single morning at 8:30 Eastern time. And the other stuff there that's coming up, of course, Power Options Plays is Tuesdays and Saturdays, Covered Call Explorer on Thursdays, and then E-Mini Think Tank with Brandon Monday, Wednesday, and Thursdays. That's right. We've got you covered. This is all the stuff that we have, right? Power Hour with Rob is every Monday. Market Mornings is every morning, pretty much. Thank you, Amy. There's a link there if you want to grab the free trial to Patterns in the Flash if you haven't experienced that tool yet. And then Brandon and Ryan and I rotate this particular course every Friday. So, of course, all the social places you can find us, Wealth Builders, and Patterns in Flash. Like I said, that's a tool I created. Man, I can't believe it's been 12 years ago we launched it. Actually, it was either March or May of 2010 originally launched it. I started building it in 2007. And the whole purpose, I'll just give you the quick concept, is to train your eyes to see the patterns on the right side of the chart. If you can't see the pattern on the right side of the chart, then what good does it do? If you see it 6 months before, if it's in the middle of the chart, you can't profit off the move if you don't see it before it moves, right? So the whole purpose of that, the whole original intent was to train my eyes to see the patterns on the right side. I literally created the flashcards for myself because I was frustrated, missing all kinds of trading opportunities because I couldn't see the patterns on the right side. Back in 2000, when I started reading books about technical analysis, learning about patterns. I started to see the power of them because I'd see them historically. But again, if you don't see it on the right side, it means nothing. So I originally created the flashcards, and then it dawned on me one day that if you know how to recognize the pattern, but you don't know what to do with it, that's kind of a problem. And I had already read the book, so I knew what to do with them, but those that are just getting started don't. So I created videos about every single pattern, what it is, the concept, how to trade it, what to look for, what makes it strong, what makes it weak. So that's essentially what it is. So it'll train you to see the patterns on the right side of the chart and how to use them, how to trade them. So there's, I think I said that before, there's about 8 hours of video in there, all about technical analysis, all about patterns. So wish you could have as the desktop background slideshow. Hey, I found a couple diamonds, and I know the diamond is not a real common pattern, For those that have a subscription, pattern of the week is a diamond. I found 2 or 3 recently, which is unusual because they're just not a very common pattern. And if you've been in the, I don't remember if those are even in the flashcards. I think I might have taken them out because there's only 1 or 2 because they're so rare. But anyway, let's get to the topic of the day. And I'm going to give you a fair warning. Not only do I drink a lot of coffee, but I'm going to break the rules today. Maybe I'm going to try not to, but I probably will. For those that have ever done any public speaking, you know, there's 2 rules: never do politics, never do religion, right? Well, we may cross those bounds a little bit today. Not necessarily planning to, but it just might come up, just the nature of the beast, right? If you're talking about morality, it's part of the deal, right? So anyway, and this is something that came up. In fact, I wonder, is she even here? I think it was Karen, if I remember right, at Trade U this last week. This is what kind of triggered the thought, actually. And if it was, I'm almost positive it was Karen. I'm just trying to remember. I know there's a Karen in here. I'm trying to remember if it's the same one. Not that Karen. Not the one people don't like. A good Karen. That's so weird. You have to explain that now, isn't it? I tell you, I swear the world's gone crazy. It's just, you use the name Karen anymore, people think you're insulting them. Anyway. So yeah, it was interesting that in Trade U this last week, I can't remember how it even came up exactly, but talking about profiting from the downside. And she put in the chat a comment about, I finally realized that it's okay, that there's nothing wrong with it. And of course, being curious, I inquired, well, a lot of people have this belief that it's wrong to profit when the market's going down. And so basically what I'm going to do here, and I'll do this for a little bit, and then we'll go look at charts and we'll look at ways to profit from the downside or the upside. Doesn't matter which way the market's going. And a lot of this is just going to be questions, food for thought, if you will. You know, it's not, this is a very subjective topic. It's not something where you're right or wrong. I had some, and I spend very little time on Facebook anymore, but occasionally I get on, if I got a few minutes just to wind down or something, I'll poke around and see what interesting stuff's out there. But I made some comment on some post that somebody made. It was completely subjective. It was just my opinion. And some guy responds and he says, "You're wrong about that." It was like, okay, God, apparently you know the difference. I mean, you know right and wrong when it comes to opinion. I think, honestly, I think that's part of the problem with everything now, is that people are so black and white and they can't differentiate between fact and opinion. And you're all entitled to your opinion. You have your opinion. I'll respect your opinion. I think that's part of the reason that things have degraded so badly, is we no longer have respect for other people's opinion, because if you can't differentiate between fact and opinion, then how do you respect somebody's opinion? If you think your opinion is fact, then you know what I mean? So it's just weird. And it's something that I'm working really hard to instill in my kids. We just had a little debate this morning about some of that. So it's getting interesting. Let's put it that way. So basically what I'm gonna do is just pose some questions, and you know, it's just, like I said, it's just food for thought. It's not, there's no right or wrong answer here. And if y'all have any thoughts or feelings or opinions about it, feel free to put it in the chat. There's and this is just kind of I'm starting off with a stupid question. I mean, obviously we can't, right? You can't control the economy. Nobody can. Not even Buffett, right? He has the ability to maybe move a stock or create some kind of news that may move the market for a short term. But even putting, billions of dollars, I mean, he bought Occidental Petroleum, right? And the stock blasted to the moon real quick, and then it went sideways for a couple of months. And of course, now oil's, broken out to the upside again. But even Buffett can't control it. I mean, Buffett's worth what, 200 billion, 150, 200? The Fed alone has $9 trillion on its balance sheet. And the economy, I don't know how many trillions the economy is considered now, but we don't have the ability, we're just a blip of sand realistically in the overall big picture of things. And I don't care how many millions you have. Even Buffett is maybe a little, he's maybe a sandcastle that somebody built, a little kid built on the sand, right? One of those little buckets. That's Buffett. So I don't even know if I'm a speck of sand. Just a fraction of a speck of sand is what I would be. But we just, we don't have the ability to control the overall economy. It's just impossible, right? But can you control your own economy? That's the ultimate question. And that's really what we're here to talk about today, is our own personal economy, not the overall economy. So I like that analogy. That's good. It's like buying all the Hot Wheels in Walmart store thinking you can raise the stock price. I know. I joke with people about that. I was bearish on McDonald's up until about a week ago when it broke back to the upside, but and everything looked really bearish and I had puts on it. So of course I was bearish because I wanted it to go down, right? But I joke with people, it's like, don't go to McDonald's. Don't go to McDonald's at all right now until their stock continues to fall, right? Which it was a joke, obviously, because one person or even a handful or even a few hundred people not going to McDonald's is not going to affect their stock price in the short term. So, but there's this whole, I see the whole world is attempting to be more virtuous, right? But here's the question for some thought is, where do your deep-seated beliefs come from about money? Because we all have beliefs around money. And honestly, this is really a huge topic. I mean, we're talking about trading the stock market, right? You're here to learn to trade the stock market, where you're working to get to that point where you can make a living trading the stock market. If you have negative beliefs about money, how are you ever going to long-term successfully trade in a stock market if you think that money is bad? I mean, it's a conflicting belief. You're here to make money. You're here to make a profit. You're here to make a living. But if you got negative beliefs around money, then how are you going to accomplish that? And it's really, as crazy as it might sound, it's not that abnormal. A lot of people are highly conflicted. You may say, I want X, Y, and Z. But to get to X, Y, and Z, you've got to do A, B, and C. And you can't get to X, Y, and Z unless you do A, B, and C. But if you see A, B, and C as a negative thing that leads to the positive X, Y, and Z, how do you ever get from the negativity to the positive? It's just impossible, right? And this is something I had to wrestle with. And I don't really anymore. And I didn't have too much of an issue with it personally, but a lot of people do. Right? It's and it's something, again, like I said, I'm posing these questions mostly for, just introspective. Like, you got to question, where are your beliefs at, right? How do you define success? Again, a very general question, but what is your definition of success? Most people define success in financial terms or materialistic terms. If you have a nice car, if you have a nice house, if you have wealth, material wealth, financial wealth, most people would call that successful. And I used to think like that. And it's not to say that it's not, because that is definitely a measure of success, financial success. And I would venture to guess that most of you are working to achieve that. I mean, who's not, right? We all are. I'm where I want to be. Is there always more? Yeah. Would it be nice to have more? Of course. Who doesn't, right? But at the same time, I don't need anything else. It's just everything's just a bonus from here on out. But the real question is, and there's the thing is, most people define success in financial terms, yet a lot of people that are super financially wealthy are miserable people. They hate their lives, right? And so what that does is goes back to the deep-seated belief that some people connect those dots and say, well, money leads to misery. If you get wealthy, you're going to be miserable. And they're not connected necessarily. They can be connected, but realistically, money is nothing more than just a tool, right? Money is just a tool. What you do with the tool is the big question. So the people that are looking for money just for money's sake, or because they think it's going to make them happy, they find out when they get there and they have a lot of money that they're not happy. And it doesn't change how they really feel about things. I know several people like that. Thought if they got rich, then everything would be, all their problems would be solved. And actually, the truth be told, it actually creates more problems. Some of my good friends who are not wealthy, great people, great hearts. I went to high school with them, both of them, and I'm still good friends with them. I still see them all the time. They come up here sometimes, and when I go down there, I make it a point to go visit them. I hang out with them because I like them. They're good people. but they're, blue collar workers and they're just good people. And I remember his wife said to me one day something about winning the lottery. If we had $1 million, that's all we fight about is money. If we just had $1 million, we wouldn't fight. I just laughed. I said, yeah, you would. You know why? Because he'll want to spend it different than you. He'll want to do one thing with it and you'll want to do something else. So now all you did was replace one fight of, okay, we don't have enough money. We're trying to figure out how to get by, to now we have an excess of money. What are we going to do with it? And you're going to disagree and you're going to have fights. So the problem is not the money. The money is not, it's an inanimate object. It doesn't control any of that. So you got to take this idea that somehow money is going to solve problems. Does it maybe make certain parts of your life easier? Can you maybe then do certain things with finances that you couldn't do without finances? Yes, but at the core, it really still doesn't do anything. It maybe makes some parts of your life easier, but in the big scheme of things, the difficult parts of life don't change, right? Financial thermostat. I've heard that too. I like that term too. I was like, you can't control the weather, right? But you control the thermostat inside your own house. You can control the temperature in your own house. That's why people say, well, you live in the Seattle area, it rains all the time out there. Well, actually, it doesn't rain. It drizzles a lot. It's gray a lot. That's really what we have. We're number 1 or number 2 for gray days. But I can't control that. I can't control the weather. That's God's place, not mine. I control my own personal weather. If it's raining outside, like it's been sunny the last 5 or 6 days. It just started raining this morning. It was sunny this morning, but now the clouds are in. It's raining outside. I was going to go for a walk after we're done. I have to get on the elliptical in the garage now. I'd rather be out in the fresh air, but I can't control it. I just have to adapt, right? So I don't let the weather outside affect my mood because I don't have any way to do that. So I love that, Leslie. I think I've heard that, but it's been a long time. Money does not buy happiness, but it can make you more comfortable in your misery. I like that. That's good. Get into some technical definitions real quick, right? This is what a recession is, which for those of you may be questioning, and we had the first quarter was negative growth, right? And I think they just revised it. And I think it was stayed about the same. A recession technically is defined as 2 quarters of negative growth, right? And unless I'm crazy, June is the last month of the second quarter. So I don't know when the GDP numbers come out. I want to say it's in July sometime, but if this quarter that we're in right now comes out and pegs a negative growth, we're then officially in a recession, right? And I'd be surprised if it comes out positive. I don't think it will. With gas prices and everything else, I don't think we're going to have growth. I think we're in a recession right now myself. It's just that things take time to develop and play out. There's already a lot of tech companies starting to talk about layoffs. They've started pulling back their hiring. I just saw something the other day that tech companies have overhired. I even heard that Amazon thought there was going to be a labor shortage, when the whole COVID thing. So they hired more people than they thought they needed just in case to have backup. But now the economy is getting weak because of inflation. Gas prices or energy prices are killing it. So I think we're in for a rough couple of years, to be honest. And I know a lot of people get cranky when I say that. And that's another reason, part of the reason for bringing this up. If you're not prepared for a really, really bad 2 or 3 or 4 years, because this economy is, at least from what I see, everything that I pay attention to and read and look at, it's just going to get worse. So, and a lot of companies, was it Carvana? I'll be surprised if they survive, actually. They're down I saw them, I think they were $35. They were $395 a year ago. They're off over 95%. And I just read something last night about new car sales were off. I think it was 5 or 6% month over month. So people are slowing down their spending, not only because they're choosing to, because the future's uncertain, but a lot of people are because they have to, because your fuel expenses have doubled. Your food expenses are up 20, 30%. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket doctor to look at the big picture and realize that your average Joe that's living month to month is struggling. And I heard from a loan broker just a month or 2 ago that 2020, we had the biggest credit card payoff in history. People paid off their credit cards in droves, biggest ever on record. 2021 was the biggest increase in credit card usage and credit card debt in history on record. So what is that? And again, looking at the big picture, you start looking at just some of these really just data points and you go, okay, well, what happens if that person who, okay, and a lot of people took equity out of their house, right? They refied their house at low interest rates and they took cash out to do a remodel or to pay off credit card debt. And then all of a sudden they're feeling, hey, my mortgage is still about the same. It's only $200 a month more. I wiped out $1,000 of credit card debt. I got $800 a month extra to spend. And then what do? They go out and buy more stuff, put it on credit. I got $800 a month extra. Might as well use it all up. And then they lose their job. And now what happens? Now they can't pay their credit card debt. In fact, I've heard that missed payments and people getting behind. I heard data recently on that's increasing. So again, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that the picture is looking worse and it's getting worse. And when layoffs start to happen, which it's already starting to happen, like Netflix was laying off, it was only 150 people, which out of 11,000 is no big deal. But things continue to get worse and they continue to lose subscribers. They have to do, mitigate their losses. So it's when you start to look at the big picture, it just does not look pretty. And so again, I'm not here trying to freak people out or panic people, but I'm saying be prepared. And not only be prepared, but learn to take advantage of it. In reality, some of the biggest wealth is created in bear markets. Not necessarily from just trading the downside, but a lot of people, I mean, look at, what's his name? Is it Michael Burry, whatever his name is? Keep seeing him in the headlines, but I mean, the dude got filthy freaking rich on the housing crash in 2008. I mean, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars because he looked at the big picture and he looked at all the different pieces of the puzzle and is going, this puzzle's starting to come together and it doesn't look very pretty. And he took a big bet on it. And he was right. So, again, I'm not trying to boo-hoo and say, but be prepared. Not only be prepared, but take advantage of it. Oh, I kind of asked that. I guess I duplicated that one, huh? And here's another question, just food for thought. Yeah, I just like your comment, Kevin. Yeah, a lot of people do. So, and actually it's funny because more and more people are starting to say that. He said, I agree. I agree totally. And not that I'm here for that. I mean, I'm not looking forward to that. It's not one of those things that, let me take that back. I'm looking forward to it, but I'm not. I don't like to see people suffer and get hurt financially, but I can't do anything about their choices, right? Which goes right into this question is, if you see other people that are successful, right? If you see somebody driving down in a Mercedes or a Ferrari or anything, and you have envy or jealousy towards them, that becomes a point where you have to question your own beliefs about money. If you look at them and you have negative thoughts about them, I mean, what business is it of yours, what kind of car they drive or what kind of money they have or how they spend their money, right? And I learned a valuable lesson. I was probably 12, maybe 13 years old. And I'll never forget, I was going somewhere with my dad. I can't remember where. He might've been taking me to school in the morning or something, but I remember pulling up into, they lived out in the country. It's a small little town. We were 6 miles outside in the country. There's a little country store there. And every day my dad would stop and get a coffee. It was a quarter, right? 25 cents for a coffee, a cup of black coffee, 25 cents. But I remember we pulled in and there's this, a Mercedes sitting there, a new Mercedes. And this lady gets out with this purple leather, kind of a suit. It was a skirt. It was a skirt and then like a jacket. It was all leather, right? It was purple. And you could tell it was nice. You could tell it wasn't cheap. And I made some comment, being obviously 12, 13 years old and naive and ignorant about the world. Oh, she must be rich. And my dad just laughed. He goes, either that or she's buried in debt. And it's funny, a lot of people live that lifestyle. And I'm not knocking it. If that's your choice, that's your choice. But they live a flashy lifestyle, but they're financially really, they may be buried in debt. They look rich, but they're buried in debt. Makes sense. So anyway, that's just always the memory that comes up. And I remember thinking of that is she may not be wealthy at all. She might be poor as all get out because she just has a bunch of debt. So something to think about. That kind of along the same lines is, do you attach a negative perspective to wealthy people? I just met a guy. I'm the type, some people have the envy or jealousy thing. I've always been one that, for whatever reason, maybe not always, but as long as I can remember, I like to cheer on other people's success. If you're successful and I just met a guy a few weeks ago, met him a few times and had a couple of meetings with him and didn't know him that well, but he had a Ferrari hat on. And after getting to know him a little bit, I realized he was a lot better off than I realized originally. I said, it might not be just a hat. He goes, no, I just ordered another one. I go, another one? He goes, yeah, I've got two. So he's got two Ferraris. He just ordered a third, and he's got a bunch of Porsches. He's building a 20-car garage to store all of his cars. And that was his thing. He was a car guy. He liked cars. He liked nice cars. He liked fast cars. He liked sports cars. And that was what he put his money into. But it was interesting. He made a good point. He said, I tell my wife, hint guys, that if I buy a car and it goes up in value, which some of the, the older cars, the collector cars, the ones that are rare, apparently Porsche's coming out with some, they're only building 1,200, and he was given an option to get one if he wants. So he's like, of course I'm going to get one because it'll go up in value. If you buy a car for 200,000, you sell it for $1 million, you make $800,000 of profit. There's no tax on that. You sell real estate for that, you're getting taxable. It's not a tax. It is a taxable event, right? Most everything else on the planet, the government taxes you. If you buy a car cheap and you sell it at a profit, that profit's not taxable. Like, that's a good point. He goes, that's what my wife knows. So that's all she needs to know. So I thought it was kind of funny. But there's an interesting question that I just popped on there, right? And it kind of gets to the heart of the whole point is it virtuous to say, well, everybody else lost money, so I need to lose money with them? And I have no doubt that there are some people that have this mindset that I don't want to prosper and succeed while others are suffering. And on the surface, I get that. But at the same time, it's like, why? Because, and again, I don't want to, and I think this came up in Trade U, and I don't say this to sound virtuous because I'm not about that. But if you're suffering with everybody else, if you're broke and can't pay your bills, then how can you help anybody else? Right? I'll never forget. I remember my grandpa, God rest his soul. He was my dad's dad. I didn't know him that well because he lived in Minnesota. So I saw him every couple of years when I was a kid, and then probably 5 or 10 times as an adult. But I'll never forget, we were at my uncle's lake cabin. And he said something about, and this was, I think it was 2008, 2009 when the economy was bad. And he made some comment about being poor, and somehow he connected being poor into being virtuous. And I can't remember how it even came up. It was my family. They've always been pretty political. So that came up. It was started off as a political discussion. And I remember it's something I learned a long time ago. It's like the best way to help the poor is not be one of them. And I said that, and he looked at me. He was probably 80 at the time, 70. He was late 70s, early 80s. Looked at me, confused for a second, and then it dawned on him. I was like, oh, okay. But it's a true statement. How, if you're broke and you're poor, how can you help anybody else out that needs help? So exactly, Leslie. If you are making money, if you're profiting in bad times, I mean, say, if a family member or a friend is going through rough times, and you're prospering, I can help. I had a friend 1.5 years ago. I was prospering. He wasn't. He called me and asked for money. And I'll be honest, it felt good to be in a position to be able to just give him almost $5,000. He said he's going to pay me back, but I didn't think he would. And he disappeared. But it feels good to know that just handing somebody $5,000 is not a big deal, and it doesn't affect your lifestyle, right? So, he was going through a rough time, and I wasn't. So again, I'm not bragging or anything. It just is what it is. the point is that if you are in a position and you know how to make money when the market drops and you can take advantage of a bearish market, then great. Then whether or not somebody needs your help or not doesn't matter. But at least if they do, then you can, right? So yeah, exactly, Leslie. I haven't heard that one before. The only thing money can't buy is poverty. Yeah, you can help people. Those that have means are the ones that help. I mean, the vast majority of charity comes from the most wealthy. So it's not a bad thing. And I've done pretty good about staying out of politics. There's one right there that is another one. And this is something that I hear from fellow Christians that I really can't stand is people love to quote the Bible and say, well, it's for a rich man, it's impossible. Some people will misquote the Bible and say it's impossible for a rich man to get into heaven, or it's what's the biblical verses? It's harder for a rich man to get into heaven than to go through the eye of a needle, than a camel to go through the eye of a needle. I don't think I quoted that exactly right, but I could see the quote in my mind. But it doesn't say it's impossible. First of all, it says it's harder, which makes sense because wealth opens the door to a lot of bad things. I mean, they need to mention Gates and Epstein. I mean, who knows what went on there, but there's a lot of craziness that happened, right? And if you get a lot of money, then a lot of people are around you. And I mean, you look at Hollywood, there's a lot of money there. There's also a lot of drugs and all the other things that are not necessarily good for us as people, right? So it may be hard to get into heaven, but it's not impossible. And I've said one thing, and I'll wrap up with this, then we'll go look at some charts. So if you have stocks you want to look at, if you have ticker symbols you want to peek at and analyze, then you can start popping them in there now. There's another one too. Thank you. Yeah, and Timothy. The love of money is the root of all evil. Right. It's the love of money, not money itself. Yeah. Money is, I said this earlier too, money is an inanimate object. It is nothing more than a tool. If I need to hang a picture, then I'm not going to go grab a fork to pound a nail in my wall. I'm going to go grab a hammer. Right? Money is nothing more than a tool. And so I got to check. I can't remember. Today's supposed to be a day I'm on Benzinga, but I haven't seen an email yet. So I don't know. I think they're having some other event going on. So I got to, forgive me, I got to keep an eye out for an email from Spencer to see if we're on today or not. But I haven't yet, so it's most likely not going to. So I should be able to go right up to 10 if I want, unless he sends me an email right at the last second, which is possible. Yeah, money is just a tool. And I mean, all right, I'm gonna go a little political. All the talk about gun stuff, right? It's obviously a current topic. It's always a topic, but sometimes it's more intense than others. And I know some of you are going to shake your head, go like, it's a stupid argument, but people die from getting hit by hammers all the time. I used to watch a lot of Forensic Files and a lot of those crime shows, and a lot of people do. They're very popular. People die from all kinds of crazy stuff. Okay. It doesn't mean we outlaw them. And it's one of those things that, and I know it's a sensitive subject, especially right now. A lot of people there's all, and that's some of the Facebook debates I've gotten into are all about the gun stuff, right? And you can feel however you want about it. It's, we're all entitled to our opinion. But the sad reality is that evil exists, and there's really no way to root it out. Speaking of the Bible, you go back to biblical times, people were evil. I mean, you're talking thousands and thousands of years, people were evil. People have used all kinds of weapons to destroy other human beings. So I don't see it as a gun problem. I see it as I don't even want to say it's a mental health. I mean, it is a mental health issue, but it's just an evil issue. Some people are just evil. And there's unfortunately no way to prevent all of it. I mean, there's one way: if you extinguish evil. I mean, if you kill evil people, then they can't produce evil if they're not alive, right? But how do you know people are evil until they until they commit an evil act? And that's what's so difficult about it. And a lot of people, well, how can we prevent this? There are some things that could be done, but there's never going to be 100% prevention. That's like saying you're going to make money on every single trade. It's just not possible. It's easy to go back after you get out of the trade at a loss, or after you make a mistake and do something dumb and make a stupid decision and go, oh, I should have done this. And I should have done that. Well, of course, it's easy to see that in hindsight. And, there's all this debate about Uvalde, whether the cops acted right or they did this or they did that. And like the one, I can't remember, I just saw one press about it. The guy was saying, well, obviously looking back, yeah, it was the wrong decision. But in the heat of the moment, it's sometimes hard to tell what the right decision is. It's like watching Wheel of Fortune. I use this example a lot, right? If you're sitting on the comfort of your couch and you're just relaxed and you can see the phrase and you're like screaming at the TV, like, it's this. And the guy's standing there who's got 25 or 50 grand on the line. You think it's easy because you're nice and comfortable and relaxed. You don't have the pressure. There's no bullets flying. But when the bullets are flying and you're standing there, like, it's a whole lot of pressure. And if you've traded with real money, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Because if you've been in a trade, you got to make a decision like, do I get out or not? It's hit my stop. Am I pulling the trigger or not? Now the bullets are flying. You got to make a decision. What are you going to do? And that maybe sounds like a lame example, but relative to obviously bullets flying versus your money flying, but it still feels the same. The pressure's there. The stress is there. You got to make a decision. It's like, you're freaking out and you got to do something. And what we've got to learn to do is maintain our composure, right? And a lot of that starts with, really with your deep sea beliefs. I don't know how I got off on that tangent, but anyway, use the right tool for the job. Money's a tool. That's where I was going. Money is nothing more than a tool. And as far as I'm concerned, if you're a good person and you make a lot of money, you're probably going to do something good with it. If you're not a good person and you make a lot of money, you're probably not going to do something good with it. You're probably going to do something bad with it. It's really, maybe this isn't a good comparison. It just hit my brain, but it's not any different than a gun. If you have a gun and you're a good person and somebody threatens you, like there was a story of a guy that pulled out a rifle, started shooting into a crowd. And some lady that was there had her weapon on her, pulled it out and shot the dude, killed him. I mean, there's a good person with a gun taking out a bad person with a gun. And money, I guess you could correlate guns and money and say they're the same because they are just a tool. Guns, any kind of weapon, whether it's a hammer, a knife, or a gun, I don't care what kind of weapon it is, it's a tool, just like money is. If you're a good person, you're going to use it for good. If you're a bad person, you're probably going to use it for bad. So anyway, all right. How was that? I didn't get on politics too much or religion too much, I don't think. So, all right, I see a bunch of ticker symbols in there. Yeah, I know, Will. Careful on this. I already know it's a very sensitive subject. And I'm sure there's some people here that are probably maybe upset and cranky at me. And that's fine. I mean, everybody's entitled to their opinion and think what they want. And I don't have any issue with it. I mean, if you believe guns should be banned, then that's fine. I mean, I respect your opinion. I would totally disagree, but I still respect your opinion. So, I'm not even going to repeat that one about the hair. Yeah, exactly. Okay. That's exactly where I went. Okay. There you go, Kevin. Exactly. I'm just, a bunch of you put in ticker symbols and a bunch of comments. So I'm just double checking, looking back real quick. Yeah. The more you give, the more you receive. Exactly. It's just, it's a biblical law. Some people call it the law of the universe, but whatever you want to call it, you can call it whatever you want. Twitter. Whew. That's a fireball right there, Raj. If you're looking at Twitter, I mean, I'll look at the chart and analyze it technically. This is one that is, if you're going to trade Twitter right now, just understand that there could be a massive news story that could affect this dramatically overnight. I mean, obviously with the whole Musk thing going on, if something changes and that deal falls through, I mean, it's at $40 now. If for some reason Musk backs out and bails on it, this thing could see $15 or $20 overnight. I mean, who knows, right? So it's really, really hard. And that's one of the reasons, even though Twitter has popped up on my radar a couple of times from a pattern perspective, it's not something I'm going to trade unless, and if you want to trade it, no problem, but you have to be aware and you have to understand that this could have a major news event overnight that could dramatically affect your position, either good or bad, right? Let's say you get into calls. If you buy calls on it and they come out and, solidify the deal at the price that he agreed to buy it for, then obviously the stock's going to jump up to that price. If he backs out and takes this $1 billion hit and says, I'm not buying Twitter anymore because the bots are 45% or whatever the number is, then that thing could easily hit 15 or 20 overnight. So if you're going to trade Twitter, you got to be aware that is you see the gaps here, right? And I believe this is when he announced buying it. And it's been kind of crazy. And now all the talk of possibly backing out, now it's sitting here like, yeah. I mean, I don't know what options look like on this thing. It may be worth looking at strangling this thing. I haven't done a strangle in years. Wish I would have on Walmart and Target on earnings, but then again, you never know. And the strangle kind of died several years ago. It wasn't that effective, but this year it would have been. In years like this, it can be effective because things are so volatile and the big moves are happening on earnings. But a lot of times the volatility is there, so they beef up the option prices. So it might be something to consider is doing a strangle on this thing if the options aren't crazy expensive. I wonder what they are. TWTR. Let's look and see real quick. I think I have. Do I have that open? Nope. I do have. I need more screens on this machine. I got plenty on the trading one, but I'm just looking real quick. Let me see if I can detach that. Just curious. I'll put this over here so you can see on that. We can see the chart on the right. I don't know. How long is the deal supposed to possibly take? I mean, is August enough time? 77 days, 2 months? Let's take a look first at September and see. The question becomes, that's the thing, how expensive is it? What was it? He was offered to buy it at what, 54 something? Was it at 54.20? I think I heard. So if it does that, it goes back to 55. Oh, okay, that's puts. The September 55 calls. Okay, so 54.50. That was his offer. It's called 55. So the 50s, if you bought the 50 calls for $1, the 52.50s are actually 46 cents. And then, this thing has the possibility to drop to 20. So let's say you get to 25s. Holy cow, look at the puts. It's a 30-cent spread on the puts and only a 9-cent spread on the calls. Wow, look at that. Yeah, well, the spreads are pretty big on the call side too. Yeah, you can buy the 25s. You can maybe pick them up for $1, $1.05. Say you can get in this thing for $1.50, $1.75. If you strangled it and got the 25s and the 50s. So then if the deal falls through and it drops to 20, obviously you're going to make about $5. If the deal does go through and it goes to 55, then you're making $5. Is it worth the risk? I don't think I would deploy into my capital to that. Even, I got some play money that sometimes I just throw out there at longer term positions and let them sit there and don't babysit them. But for the most part, it's like, why? I just don't see the sense in, deploying a bunch of capital into something that I don't think's got a high degree of probability of profiting. So yeah, on a short-term basis, there's really not much here as far as patterns go. You got a couple of gaps that are filled. From a technical perspective, I don't see anything here that would prompt me to get into a trade. So just be careful because of that. That potential for a big news story is definitely there. Let's go back. I think you look for ABBV. You've been watching what I'm trading or what? Is that the other one, Raj, that you put in there? I think it was Twitter. ABBV, yeah. ABBV I love. I just got out 2 days ago. I stopped out, basically put a trailing stop on it. This was originally that upper line 154. I had to stop just above there, and then the target was down there at 146. And it hit it once, and I got out of some of it here, and then it popped for a couple of days, and I held on to, I think I had half a position left or a third left, and it finally came back down here, and I got out of it somewhere on that day. It hit the target. I think I had 5 contracts left. And when it hit the target, I took 2 out, and then I waited till later. It might have been yesterday. Let me do a quick update on this. I don't know how much the market's moved. Yeah, it's just kind of flat over the last hour, but I'm looking at this, having it drop below there. So, but if it goes below that 146 level, so we've got the beginnings of, it's just basically bouncing here. We got a hammer pattern yesterday after a little shadow, but we did make an intraday low yesterday. So if it holds this 146 line, then I wouldn't do anything with it. If it breaks 146 and closes below that, now I'm looking for a target about 136.50. That's what can be tricky though, right? Sometimes it takes off and runs just like it did yesterday. I mean, if you got in at 144.44, you'd be getting stopped out today. But if it's holding this line right now, if it breaks below this again, especially on an intraday basis, I'd maybe pick up 2 or 3 contracts here and then wait to see where it closes. That way, if it pulls one of these like a hammer like it did yesterday, then I only have a couple of contracts at risk and get stopped out today, so it doesn't cost me a lot. If it continues to fall, then I can add to it. So that's what I'm looking at for ABBV. Let me catch up now real quick. NVIDIA. Yeah, I'm not very happy with NVIDIA right now. A little bit cranky. Not today, I guess, but so this is a nice little double bottom, right? Same thing. Comcast is the same. If I don't remember if that was a pattern of the week a couple weeks ago. I remember looking at it, but so beautiful little double bottom. Earnings gave it a nice little catapult. It broke the midpoint, which is right here. And if you're not familiar with these patterns, this is exactly the stuff that I cover in Patterns and Flash, is not only how to recognize this pattern on the right side, but where to trade it. This is the midpoint, right? If it breaks above the midpoint, that's a bullish indication. And then we look for either it could just take off and run. And that's one reason a lot of times I will pick up just a small position just in case it bolts. That way, at least I'm making a little bit and not cranky and upset and say, woulda, shoulda, coulda. But this is a textbook pattern where it breaks out, pulls back a little bit, does a roll reversal on the midpoint, and then takes off to the upside. And I got into it that day right there. Because this was the pattern of the week last week. I just remember because I did the review early this morning. And I got into it that day. And then this day right here, I decided the market started to turn over. Everything started to look bearish. And I went, you know what? I'm about break even. I'm just going to get out. And then yesterday happened and I was cranky. I was like, I think I paid $9.20. I got it in 2 pieces, actually. That's right. I got in this day with I just picked up 1 contract. I thought, you know what? If it's going to take off, I want to be there. The next day I added to it. And the following day I was about break even and things started to turn over. I got stopped out on Alcoa. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to get out break even. And then if it gives me another entry point, I'll jump on it. And then yesterday I missed the entry point. By the time I saw it, it was too far gone. So I didn't get in. So I was a little cranky. I should have just held on, but again, woulda, shoulda, coulda, right? You never know. But then today, if I'd have held on yesterday to the whole thing, today I'd be cranky because I'd be back to about break even, because that is today's candle. That just updated 9:32. So it's about 20 minutes delayed. But yeah, the market's effectively just sideways right now. So as far as NVIDIA go, and realistically, it's still above that midpoint. And if it does come down and hold this 180 line and it bounces again, then this same trading plan would be in play. Because if it holds that midpoint, in fact, speaking of that, let's do a quick little top down. I'll get that right there. I see you're yelling at Kevin. I just saw your thing about the Ukraine. Oh, interesting question, Leslie. I just saw that. I know I'm about 8 or 9 minutes behind, but Leslie asked an interesting question. Could this be a strategy in Musk has puts? Entirely possible. I'm going to say that it's probably not likely, considering he's having a fight with Gates about Gates shorting Tesla stock. Apparently, Gates had a multi-billion-dollar short position on Tesla, which, I mean, Gates is not stupid. So, and Tesla, as far as I'm concerned, and most people are concerned, and obviously one of the wealthiest guys in the world is concerned, was overvalued at $1,000, $1,100. It's too rich. Even Musk knows that. That's why he sold a bunch of it. Musk knew that his company's valuation-wise, $1,100 or $1,200 was way too high. So he sold a boatload of it, which is genius. It's smart. He's a smart dude. Sell it. I mean, if it's at a high and it's going to go lower, then why wouldn't you get out of it? So I don't know why he's upset with Gates. Even though I'm not a big fan of Gates, the more I learn about Musk and the more I see him, the more I love the guy. I'm really not a huge fan of Bill Gates. Partly since we're talking about moral stuff, I mean, you look at some of the stuff he's done, it sounds like he's not exactly his moral compass doesn't point due north. Let's put it that way. I mean, I'm no angel, but there's some things that are just out of bounds. And it's some of the things that has been reported that he's done. If it's true, which it sounds like it is, then yeah, I'm definitely not a fan. But I mean, people are people, people do stupid stuff, So speaking of the money, going to your head and opening up all kinds of opportunities for you to do crazy things, that's one example of it. So, but that's one thing I want to look at too, is because NVIDIA is very, very similar to the overall market. And here's the SPX. And even though it's not a textbook, NVIDIA is pretty much a textbook double bottom where the bottoms are the same. NVIDIA, we've got, or not NVIDIA, but SPX. We actually have a close that's lower. It's not lower by a lot. If you look at the intraday, even the intraday move was lower. So that right there is a bearish sign that it's not a clean double bottom, but it's also not a lot. You're talking 40 or 50 points, which on a 3,900 point index is not that much, right? But we had this double bottom. Here's the midpoint. So when it breaks the midpoint, that's a bullish reversal indication. Right now, and we did just like NVIDIA, it pulled back, tapped it, and then bounced off of it. I'm still not convinced that we're going to have a bullish run on this thing, but we could. If we stay above that point right there, if the market holds this line right about 4,100, if it dances on here for the next few days or a week or two, and then takes off to the upside, then I would turn bullish in the short term. If it can't hold this 4,100 and it breaks below it, I'm loading back up on some puts. I pretty much cleared out early this week. I pulled the trigger early on some oil stocks, got into a bunch of puts, and they all broke to the upside. As if you pay attention to that sector, you probably saw. So I got beat up a little bit. And so I was working my mind. So I got out. I just closed all of that. And I kept a couple other ones. I finally got out of ABBV, and then McDonald's I closed out. But I pretty much just went flat just to clear my head. Because when you get beat up a little bit, even though it wasn't awful, but it was a little bit more than I expected. And the one thing from a mental perspective, if you find yourself in that position where you're beating yourself up a little bit mentally because of mistakes you've made, and it wasn't even mistakes, it was just the trades went against me, and I probably should have gotten out a little bit sooner and not have tried to jockey it in and out as much as I did. But it is what it is. So, but if you find yourself in a place mentally or emotionally where you're rattled, or you're not in a place where you can make good, solid decisions, then get out of the market and just stay out of it if you have to. I've done it many times. I mean, I've done it for weeks at a time before. Now, if I have something like this happen, it's usually a day or 2 or 3 days. I clear my head and I'm back to the good. So, but do what you have to keep your head straight. That's the important part. So if we break back below that midpoint and close down in here in the 4050 to 4100 range on the SPX, then I'd get bearish again. And I wouldn't be surprised to see it crash right through that low. So we'll see. And all these indexes are basically the same. There's the Russell. And we do have, there's the midpoint, right? We've got a little bit of a rising through methods here, which is a bullish continuation pattern, but the days in between are not small. It's not a real clean pattern. It's not real spectacular. The Dow is very similar, right? There's the midpoint, except we also made lows on the Dow too, even a closing basis. So it's not really a clean double bottom. Excuse me. But if we drop back below that level, then I'll get bearish again. If we take off to the upside, then I'd play some short-term bullish moves. Nasdaq's very similar too. This is a cleaner double bottom than the other markets. Russell actually has a little bit of a, well, yeah, Basically 12,000 is the midpoint of the double bottom there. You can see the NASDAQ's a little cleaner double bottom. But again, it's also pretty small. When they're close together like this, they don't mean as much. If there was several weeks in between, this is only like a week and a half, 2 weeks. If there was 3 to 6, 8 weeks in between the double bottoms, that would be more powerful. But the way they are right now, it's like, yeah, they're not that spectacular. I mean, you see a very similar pattern here, right? So we could have, this is basically the same thing that we had back in February and March. The bottom out of support, bounced back. It kind of broke below it a little bit, but then it took off and ran. So again, if we move north from here, I would expect this type of move and then a roll back over. Long term, I think this thing is headed further south. How many of you were there at Trading U the other night? You remember? remember what I showed there? That was a little bit, I wouldn't say spooky, but it is what it is, right? I just saw your note, Raj. So you're hoping that Musk pulls out of the deal and it tanks, right? So I don't know, or did you sell it? That's the hard part. I'm not sure what you did with it, and it really doesn't matter. I can't say anything as far as what you should or shouldn't do. I can analyze the chart, but that's about all I can do. What's CRSP? Let's do that. I just realized we only got a few minutes left. CRISPR Therapeutics. Is this another COVID-related deal? I don't know anything about these guys. Never heard of them, actually. Not that it matters because I can look at the chart and draw some lines, and that's all I need. Relatively new. Oh, come on. Yeah, there's gene splicing firm. Interesting. These are ones that, I mean, you can see there's a beautiful head and shoulders right there. Well, I wouldn't say it's beautiful. This right shoulder is not that big. There's a little bit of one right here and then another one right here. It looks a lot like Peloton did. But again, this doesn't do any good for you now. If you would have played it back there, 160 to 120. That's about what Peloton did. Actually, it was 150 to like 130 or 120 in a matter of just a couple of weeks. So this looks a lot like Peloton, obviously different industry, but it's been beat up. But here's the beauty is y'all see the pattern on the right side of the chart, which is the big question. And there is one here for sure. It has kind of sort of played out already, though. The inverted head and shoulders. Right? It's the opposite of that one, which is a bottoming pattern. But, and again, this is how we do it. If you want to learn how to do what I'm doing right now, then, and there's the crazy part. This is the beauty of patterns. There's the inverted head and shoulders. The target is to 70, which is the previous resistance level, which it's already there. So the risk reward's gone. The last couple of days have kind of killed it. I don't know what's driving it. There's earnings. Obviously, something must have come out in earnings, I'm guessing, and the response was fairly favorable. But then it took a couple of days for them to digest it, and then it took off. So if it hits 70, then maybe. If it breaks above north of 70, then maybe consider bullish. But then it becomes then the pattern is pretty much negated, and then you just have to go off of the previous history, which the next level is up there about 83. If it breaks north, but that's if. And if it does it quickly, I mean, this thing's climbing a cliff right now. And if you climb a cliff that fast, if you run up a hill that's that steep that quickly, you're probably going to have to catch your breath pretty soon. So, makes sense? Holy God. Was that NVIDIA, Karen? I just noticed your question about what would you consider the entry. Okay, let me get back to that real quick, and then we got to wrap up. It's show at the end of the day. There's another good question. Leslie, how would anyone know what position another person has, or are they advertising their shorts? Yeah, you really can't know unless somebody announces it. I mean, if somebody comes out and says that they have a short position. So unless, I mean, if Gates has got a big enough position, or maybe he knows people inside there. I don't know. I mean, maybe he knows people inside the, that manage Gates' money. I don't know how Musk could know. Maybe Gates may have come out and said something about it, which would make sense. I mean, from a public perspective, if you're Bill Gates and you want to make money on a multi-billion-dollar short, if you tell everybody you're short Tesla and you have an influential voice, which if you get influence, then people are going to start shorting Tesla or selling it, right? So it makes sense for Gates to come out and announce that he's got a huge short on Tesla. I don't know, but it's a good question. What would I consider the entry point? That is the beauty of these lines right there. See that orange line? And I don't know if you help me out, Karen. If I don't know if you're in Patterns of Flash, I know there's at least one, if not two, Karens that subscribe to it, and I usually just stick to first names. I don't necessarily look at last names, so we'll have to see. But the entry point's there at 184.68. That is based on 3-to-1. That's based on the stop, right? So if I'm going to stop out at 177.50, my target is 206.20, then 184.68 gives me a 3-to-1 risk reward. That's exactly what those colors are. The red is the stop, the green is the target, and then all I do is put those into the risk reward calculator that I use. That is mine. Well, it's not really mine. It's just a calculator that tells me when to get in, when to get out. I don't know if it's still on there or not. You're welcome, Raj. Huh, interesting. Gene splicing. Do we still look at W or M patterns? It used to be a thing. Oh, it's still a thing. It's always been a thing. This is the beauty of patterns. This is why I love patterns. And it's why, 22 years ago when I started doing this, it's what I fell in love with it out of the beginning. This is Patterns of Flash if you haven't seen it. This is everything that's in there. But I'm just going to do the calculator real quick because we got to wrap up. Patterns are nothing more than a visual representation of the underlying human emotion and how people are feeling about a specific stock, right? So the patterns that I learned about 22 years ago are the same patterns that show up today and the same patterns that play out and produce profitable trades consistently. And they're never going to change because they're based on human emotion. And 2,000 years ago, people were the same as they are today. We all are born with the same emotions. How we respond to them is different. But at the same time, when you look at history, especially if you study financial history and how people respond to craziness, financial craziness, it's always the same story, right? It's just like Dateline, it's like I just thought of Gaffigan, right? It's like Dateline, sometimes he tells us a joke about how Dateline just went all in on murder. Like every show they had was about some crazy murder. And it's like, but that's how detectives solve crime, right? Because people have their patterns, right? You look at people's patterns and how they do things. And so there's how I came up with the 184 is the 177.50 is the stop. The target's 206, 184.68 is the target, which gives me $7 of risk and 21.50 of upside. So I have 3 times as much profit potential as I do downside. Okay, good, Karen. Then you'll be another Karen in there because there's already at least one Karen in there. I think there's 2. So yeah, thank you, Amy. She just put the link there. So go grab it. You got 2 weeks to go kick the tires. Go check it out. And here's what I would suggest you do is go in and take the quizzes. That'll tell you where you're at. From a technical analysis standpoint, there's basics of trends, basics of candlesticks, and then price patterns, candlestick patterns. 4 different quizzes in there. Go take the trial, go take the quizzes, go into the bonus section and the risk reward calculator that I just showed you. Watch this video right here, the risk reward one. That'll show you why 3-to-1 is not only important, but critical to your success long-term. So, Amos, the Trading class was last week. It was, what was it? What was it titled? I can't remember. Yeah, it was the one just last week. If you look it up, you should be able to look it up by date. So I would agree, Karen. You do need it. But yeah, go do those. And then like I said, the videos, there's about 8 hours of video. What's the bonus videos? There's about 8 hours of video in here covering all the basics. So if you're brand new to technical analysis, even if you're not, 95% of what I do as far as trading goes is all off of this right here. The patterns are important, but you can't understand the patterns well if you don't understand this. If you don't have the foundation, your house ain't going to stand, right? You got to have this foundation in order to really, truly understand all these patterns down here. And then there's a recording of the month. If you can't make it to the live class, then there's recordings over here. So, and then also the pattern of the week. I don't know where that went. We can go to flash. Here's the flashcards. And then I'm going to wrap up. So There we go. And we are making some changes to this right now. So these are flashcards. If you click on one, basically what it's going to do is, and this is the training mechanism, right? That you train your eyes to be able to see the patterns on the right side. And it's just like flashcards, right? You just flip through them and identify the pattern and train your eyes. That's all it is. It's one of the oldest studying methods in the book, right? But it works. And like I said, 20 some years ago, I created it for myself because I was frustrated not being able to see the patterns on the right side. So I created it for myself and it was effective. Within a few short weeks, I started to see them on the right side and that changed everything. So, and then the pattern of the week is once a week. I do one, sometimes more than that. If I find a couple of patterns I'll share, then we'll basically give that. So, all righty. I'm now a little long-winded. So appreciate y'all coming and hanging out, having some fun, and dealing with some of the subjective opinions of mine. So anyway, appreciate y'all having some fun. Y'all have a good day. Have a great week. God bless. Bye-bye.